An excerpt from the book, The Thousand Mile War, World War II in Alaska and the Aleutians, by Brian Garfield. In the heaving darkness of the night of August 28, 1942, crossing the reefs, they paddled into Kulak Bay, dragged their rafts up on the beach, and fanned out inland. They covered ground thoroughly, taking all night to sweep the island. They found no Japanese. There were not even ashes to indicate recent enemy presence on the island, code name Fireplace. In the cold morning, Costner set out an all-clear cloth strip signal for the PBY overhead, which radioed the news once it had flown away from the island. And with that began the 56 years of military having served on Adak. When World War II ended, the U.S. military maintained its presence on the tiny island and soon became an important outpost in 1947 when the Cold War started with the Soviet Union. During that time, the United States Army handed off the base on Adak to the United States Navy and a handful of Marines to stand watch as the security force up until 1992, and the base final closing in March of 1997. Now, the former Cold War base, once full of military activities, is an empty shell of itself, falling prey to the harsh Aleutian weather. The lack of care as nature encroaches, reclaiming what is its own. Today, visitors, hunters intent on hunting caribou, the fishermen, and eco-tourists just only have a vague notion of the history of those who have served there during the Cold War. And yet, with the ravage of time, all this does not erase the memories from those who have served on Adak. Almost 82 years after the landing of the commandos assigned to sweep the island and give the all-clear, a fire team of Marines returned to Adak, having served there between 1978 and 1987. They came to celebrate, share experiences, and to bond as Marines who have experienced the birthplace of the winds during the Cold War, to tell theirs, as well as others, their story.
Semper Fi, Marine. Hoorah!
I'll just take the front seat.
Hey Marine, how's it going?
It's going good.
Looking forward to returning to the rock.
Yes.
Semper Fi.
Semper Fi.
Welcome to Adak, everybody. The local time is 1:06. There has been a 1-hour time change. We'd like to say a special welcome back to 4 of our passengers back there. They're Marines, and they used to be based here. They're here to make a documentary. Cross-check.
He was doing a full tour.
Yeah, right on.
Who's our Alley Corporation guy?
Dustin.
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 All right.
My return to Adak. This is Kulak Beach, where we used to have beach parties when the weather was good. Kind of like today. Right now it's about 60 degrees with absolutely no wind, as you can tell by the ocean, which is extremely unusual for Adak. Almost a Chamber of Commerce day, except for the fog with a low cloud cover, but amazing and still the same.
Welcome, folks, to the island of Adak, Alaska. We're standing here at Kulak Beach, site of the 1942 unopposed landings by the Army, an establishment of a base of operations to intercept and destroy Japanese-held islands in the Aleutian Island, specifically the island of Kiska and Adak. This story that's going to unfold, you'll see, is a story about the Cold War Marines, though. Our mission primarily as Marines is amphibious space. So we figured we'd start here on Kulak Beach, where we Marines are familiar with the ocean and the beach, and go from there. This story is exciting, told through the eyes of several Marines who once served here. I'll be your host, Dr. Erdman, who I served here 45 years ago, in addition to our cameraman, Sergeant Major retired Charles Abels, as well as Michael Rodgers and Byron Bailey. All of us served here about 45 years ago, and it'll be told through their eyes. You're getting a first-hand story. We're going to tell you where we lived, where we worked, and where we played. We're going to bring, for the next week, this island back alive for our fellow Marines and for the general public to understand what we did up here, because nothing like this has ever been done before. So join me on this mission. I think you'll like what you'll see and be surprised on this island that is majestic, that is sinister, mystical, and magical, all rolled into one. Come join me. Primary mission was the security of 76 thermonuclear warheads that were destined for Soviet submarines during the Cold War. And we took that job very seriously. We were young men, teenagers with machine guns. Sometimes we didn't know what to do, sometimes we did, but we were dedicated, and when the chips were down, we were there. We were a family here.
In 1947, with the coming of the Cold War overshadowing the globe, countries of NATO and countries of the Warsaw Pact began posturing against each other, this time with a terrible new weapon as the poker chips. Both the U.S. and Russia played their hands regularly to seek an advantage over each other. In anticipation, the United States approved the National Security Act of 1947 on July 26th. The roles of the military had stayed intact since their creation in the defense of our nation. The Marine Corps maintained its nautical traditions, reinforcing its ties with the sea and traditions with its sister branch, the United States Navy. One of the assignments given was simple and direct. The Marine Corps shall provide detachments and organizations for service on armed vessels of the Navy, shall provide security detachments for the protection of naval property at naval stations and bases. And to accomplish its mission, the United States Marine Security Guard of the Marine Barracks had been assigned the responsibility of maintaining a worldwide presence, guarding and protecting key naval assets and special strategic weapons. It has been said by others, the Marines of the security force on Adak were high-strung and aggressive. However, if you were to ask the young 17, 18, 19-year-old Marine pulling watch, they would tell you they were just doing their job protecting the naval installation, such as, when it was required, standing watch on the docks of Sweeper Cove and the airfield. There was full-time duties assigned: foot patrol around the base, standing watch at NSGA, Zito Point, and the COC at the barracks. And despite those demanding assignments, the most challenging of all watches was being assigned duty at the MAU, or the Modified Advanced Underwater Weapons Compound, where nuclear depth charges were stored. Here, before any Marines enter the compound, they had to pass the PRP screening, which is the Personnel Reliability Program, and it is a United States Department of Defense Security medical and psychological evaluation program. It is designed to permit only the most trustworthy individuals to have access to nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons. In addition, Marines had to meet exacting standards and knowledge before standing post within the compound.
And here to explain to you the weapons of mass destruction that were stored here. Where we're at inside the MAU compound here is the so-called 7 Doors of Doom. There are 7 underground bunkers used to store various weapons. The first 2 bunkers stored the Mark 57 thermonuclear weapon. It was basically a underwater depth charge with a hydrostatic fuse. A hydrostatic fuse means you could set it to go off at a certain depth. The intention was that any submarine within that certain radius in the vicinity where that was set off underwater would implode. There were 76 of those weapons stored between these 2 bunkers. The first 2 bunkers were utilized because easy access for a weapons movement in the event of war, where the weapons movement be conducted through here, the frontage road, around this corner to the airport, to an apron waiting with a P-3 Orion airplane that would deploy the weapon. So if you picked up at that level, the P-3 Orion aircraft, the bomb bay could store 3 torpedoes or Mark 57 nuclear warheads. So as you see when you come in here, it's actually not really that big. There's a lot of debris in here. Locals must have used this for whatever reason, but the weapons sat on carts for easy movement. So you had about 35, 36 of these weapons stored in here. There's concrete poured over this, about 2 feet of concrete. And as you can see, the countryside here, this is exposed. So this is all exclusionary zone. This is off limits for anyone to be viewing this. But this is the bunker where these weapons were stored.
Well, welcome to the compound, affectionately known to us Marines as the Pound. You can see we have a very typical Adak day. Keep in mind that this is in August, so imagine what it would have been like in the middle of winter here. What you're standing here in today, this is how vehicles will get into the MAU compound. A vehicle would enter here after calling the sentry on here, stating their business and why they were here. The sentry in post 2 would then call the guardhouse and the corporal of the guard. And the corporal of the guard and 2 other Marines would come down. As soon as a vehicle entered into this area, the gate would close behind so they couldn't leave. The vehicle would stop here. They would go in and make sure that the person was authorized and do the badge exchange. And the corporal of the guard would enter into this area with the 2 Marines. The vehicle would be searched. Mirrors would be put underneath the vehicle to make sure that there were no explosives underneath the vehicle or any funny business going on. And once the identification has been made and verified, the vehicle would then be able to proceed through this gate. Usually the vehicles were here for shops personnel. I would like to point out that the Marines out here were authorized to use deadly force. And deadly force was defined as that force which a person uses with the purpose of causing death or serious bodily harm. And we were quizzed on that definition, so you were crystal clear what you were authorized to do in the event that you had to use that deadly force. But when you reported for duty and did a changeover, you would enter through that turnstile right there, which is called the rabbit run. This was post 2 that controlled the entrance and exits of vehicles and personnel into the Naval compound. Here you would go ahead and give the sentry your badge. He would make sure that he had a positive photo ID, and then he would give you the badge that matched your ID. And then he would ask you if you have any weapons or spark producing devices on your person. And if you did, you had to turn in the spark producing devices, as none were allowed in the compound at the time. So inside, you'd have one Marine sentry controlling this access point. He was armed with an M16, 6 magazines of ammo. He had a radio, a logbook, and he had every badge for all the personnel, authorized personnel that were allowed in here. In terms of the badges, there were 3 categories. You had a Category 1 badge, which basically gave you free reign of the place. And those were typically shops personnel who worked on the weapons over in the shops area. You also had Category 2 badges, which were the Marine Corps Security Force personnel, which basically were allowed free access within the MAW compound, not including the exclusion areas, which would be the magazines and the shops area. We couldn't go into the shops area unless you were escorted by a Category 1. Then you had Category 3, and that was a red badge that people would wear, and that required an armed escort. So a Marine would have to be with that person as they would come in. Of course, they would have to have a business need to know to come in here. And then they would be armed by an armed Marine escort to wherever they needed to go until they left the compound. So this is what it looks like today, which is unfortunate. But here's the window where the badge exchange would take place, and he would question you in terms of the spark producing devices and weapons that anybody would be bringing in. They have the old badge rack is actually here. Here you had the badge rack. The badges sat in these slots here, and this thing was covered with all the personnel that were authorized to come in here. And so they would, again, give the ID here at the window. You would go find their badge here. You'd match it up. Then you'd go back and you'd match up their identity physically with the picture. And then they were given the badge. And then the sentry would hit the button that would unlock the turnstile there, and they would enter into the compound. It had a logbook. Everything was logged. Anything that you did was logged, even the radio checks that would take place every once in a while. This was considered a luxury post because you actually had a commode here right around the corner in my day. This was one of the more senior posts because of the amount of responsibility that you had controlling entrance and exits of the MAL compound.
If someone needed to use the facilities, you would have to have a Marine gear up, arm up, and come up and relieve duty, and they had to be qualified to stand this post.
Right.
Flankers were not, that if you didn't qualify to stand this post, you weren't allowed to.
Yeah. Same in our day.
And you can see the seriousness with this incredible glass here. It's unfortunate that people have shot it and tried to break it out, but they've failed at penetrating it. So this was a very fortified sentry position for the Marine Corps in guarding the MAL.
So this is post 3 here. Heavily fortified door. You had a slot so you could talk to whoever's coming on the hatch. Corporal of the guard come and inspect your post. You'd have to identify that person through there and make a visual identification through there by him showing the badge. And then you would let your corporal of the guard in, or sergeant of the guard or platoon sergeant in to inspect your post. This is all secured from the inside. So you'd shut the door and put the lock. You had a large piece of wood that would fit through here, that would fit over here, and reinforced by another metal lock.
Deadbolt
Yeah,
was
deadbolt.
gone, and you had your firing portals.
So this is post 3, otherwise known as a visual assessment center. You had areas of responsibilities. As Byron was mentioning earlier, there's a gate over here, referred to as West Road Gate. And so when a vehicle would pull up to that gate, the sentry in here would challenge them, saying, "Vehicle identified at West Road Gate, identify yourself." And they would wait for a response. If they didn't get a response, they'd say it again. If they didn't get a response, then a SAT was called. And a SAT was activated out of the guardhouse with the corporal of the guard and 2 armed Marines, and they would react to the situation of an unauthorized vehicle being in our restricted area. The Marine in this post carried an M16, 6 magazines of ammo, a logbook, a radio. Here you have firing ports. So if you were to get into a situation where the Mao compound was being attacked, these would slide open and you'd be able to fire your weapon through there. And then you had interlocking fields of fire between this post here and the other visual assessment center at the other end of the compound. So these are 2 of the visual assessment centers that would cover the restricted area. And now when there's a changing of the guard, that was all done in front of the corporal of the guard. So the corporal of the guard would be the senior person on guard that would actually post each Marine to make sure that there was an efficient and an accurate changeover and secure changeover.
In the RFF, which is basically the mini barracks reaction force building on the compound at post 7 and 7 Alpha, which was monitoring the alarm boards for the sensors around the compound. So they had what's called the MAID Miles system and Miles sensor system, which basically MAID, M-A-I-D, Miles, M-I-L-S, stood for magnetic anti-intrusion devices, and Miles magnetic intrusion line sensors. Basically, there are ground sensors around the compound, outside the outer perimeter fence, as well as there are sensors on the fence itself. Because of the strong winds, often the winds would set off the sensors, especially the fence sensors, and post 7 and 7 Alpha. In the RFF building in the compound, basically the monitors at those posts, there was an alarm board for that system, and there was an outline of the compound basically on this board, and there was the compound was divided into sectors, and each sector had a light. There was a lit button, and so if a sensor went off, it would light and flash, that is, and then basically the monitor, post 7 or 7 Alpha, would call a flanker. Flanker again is post 5 and 6, and the closest flanker near that sensor, he would examine that area visually, and if it was all clear, he would radio on his walkie-talkie to the post 7 and 7 Alpha in the RFF that is all clear, and then that that post would then reset the alarm board by pressing the button and it would reset the system and turn the light off. So that was how that system worked.
Okay, so what we're standing in front of here is the RFF, known as the Reaction Force Facility. This is the guardhouse that would house all the Marines that are on duty out here. So we're going to give you a tour and show you what's inside. As you were coming off duty, you would meet the corporal of the guard, and your weapon was unloaded in here. In here is a bunch of sandbags. You stick your barrel in there, and the corporal of the guard would clear the weapon to make sure that there was no rounds chambered, and the accountability for ammunition. During my time here, we unfortunately had a couple different accidental discharges with shotguns and some of the M16s, and it was merely a fact of somebody clearing the weapon or not paying attention. Is the COG hut, or where the corporal of the guard and the sergeant of the guard would sit when the sergeant of the guard was here. He was roaming between the Mal compound and the Marine Barracks because he was inspecting the backup force. We had an electronic map of the compound here. We were able to monitor that. We had a desk, telephone, radio bank, logbook, and then back here it's a safe that had a number of different things in it. I can't recall all that was in there. Ammo, yeah, that's right. More ammo. And I think grenades were in there as well.
Yes.
And shotgun shells as well. Corporal of the guard carried a shotgun. It's a 12 gauge shotgun with double aught buck. The sergeant of the guard was armed with a 45. From here, here's the kitchen. So you can see here all the cabinetry where all the dishes and plates were kept. The stove's here. In here, in this room, you know, nice mural here painted by a Marine. We had tables and chairs in here, and here's where you drink coffee and eat your food and, you know, just kind of socialize. Through this hatch here is the berthing area. This is where, if you weren't standing post and you were sleeping, this is where you would sleep. You know, you bring your sleeping bag out here. And then here, it gives you a good example here with a bunk. You actually had a locker next to the rack that you slept in. You put some of your gear in. So this is what we refer to as the ACC, otherwise known as the Access Control Center. What that did was, you know, we had electronic maps that monitored the alarm systems of the magazines and the sections of the fences. We had comms, we had TV camera monitors in here. We would also keep in here the lists that were top secret of those people that had access to the exclusion area in the event that we had to open up a magazine for shops to access a weapon, to work on it, or what have you. And so there was a lot of information in here and a lot that you were responsible for. So let's take a look. So welcome to the ACC. So two Marines would man this post. A console that was actually here. And basically it had buttons to control the alarms in the different zones of the fences. We had a large electronic map of the compound. If everything was good to go, everything was in green. To the extent that we had some issue, you know, could be weather related on the fence, or, you know, God forbid, somebody trying to get into the compound and the inertia system would set off the alarm, we would get the alarm here. And we also controlled a lot of the communications here as well. A post where you had to keep track of a lot of things, particularly when there was a weapons movement, because that was a really, really, really big deal. And it had to be very, very closely coordinated with the Navy and the shops personnel. So to access post 4, you come up this ladder well. Here's the hatch that was pretty much airtight. It was a pretty good sealed door. So this is where the rest of the reactionary force would deploy in the event that you know, we're going through a drill, or there was some event that would require the deployment of the reactionary force. People would be, you know, positioned around the roof of the RFF here in terms of whatever the situation may be. You know, just a side story, in 1986 when I was here, we had a 7.6 or 7.8 earthquake that hit the island, and we were on duty out here. And then we had two powerful aftershocks that were like 5.6 and 5.9. That put everything into play here in terms of The reactionary force was deployed out here. The backup force was deployed from the Marine Barracks. And then we had other platoons deployed as well, because it was a very serious situation in terms of the stability, the earthquakes, and the nuclear weapons that were in those magazines. In addition to that, there was a tsunami watch that was put out, a tsunami warning. And us Marines had to stay here and guard the compound. And the other Marines that were deployed, had to remain in their positions as well. And I remember very distinctly coming up here to the roof, and I had my binos with me, and I'm looking out here at the tundra and these roads out here, and the amount of vehicles that I saw heading to high ground gave you a very sort of picture of how the situation. Turns out that by the time the tsunami hit Adak, it was pretty insignificant, thankfully. And so people came back down and we resumed life on the island or what have you. But I got to tell you, it was a pretty harrowing moment. I mean, I'm from California, and in the Bay Area, we have our share of earthquakes, but to go through, 7.8, 7.9 earthquake was pretty eye-opening. Thankfully, nobody was hurt, and we didn't have any issues with the weapons.
So where did the 76 nuclear warheads go to? Well, with the fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of the Cold War, in mid to late 1991, those weapons were flown off island in 2 aircraft, and they were destined and went to North Island Naval Air Station in San Diego. Where they went after that, who knows, but that's what happened under the cloak of darkness. Now we're at a building where we were never allowed in. It was none of our business. It was not our wheelhouse. This is a Navy weapons maintenance building. I'm sure it had a different name, but we can go through there and I'll show you some things within it. There are some of it's fairly obvious, where these weapons, both mass destructive weapons or nuclear weapons as well as conventional torpedoes, were maintained. So as you can see in here, there's gantry cranes. These weapons were extremely heavy, and so they could pull them off a cart, and there was bomb bays, if you will, where they could track them on this whole gantry apparatus, turn them into the bomb bay for servicing. I'm sure there were tool chests and maintenance tools to service these weapons. They're long gone here. As we come down here, the motor for the gantry crane setup is right here. And again, 2 more bomb servicing bays here, weapon servicing bays. Basically, again, this is maintained by weapons technicians for the United States Navy here. And our sole purpose, once again, is to be sure this compound is secured. So not only were they stored here, they're so far out in the middle of nowhere in the Bering Sea, they were maintained here.
All right, so we're back here in the basement, or what we refer to as the classroom. Again, here what we would get is briefings before going on guard duty. This is also where the backup force actually would come down and get inspected by the sergeant of the guard. We've talked a little bit about the Marines out at the Mal compound. So you had half the platoon, which was roughly about 50 men, 40 to 50 men. Half the platoon would be out at the compound, and then half the platoon would be back here assigned to backup force. And what they were designed to do was, if the shit hit the fan out at the compound, the backup force was reacted, and we would go out and provide support to them. If you're on the backup force, you had to stay in camis, and if you left the barracks, you had to take all of your 782 gear or combat gear. And then when a reaction drill or the alarm sounded, all the Marines, regardless of where you were on the backup force, would come down here, rally here, and they would run down this corridor here down to the COC post 1, and weapons would be distributed, and then they would deploy out to the vehicles and then haul ass out to the compound. And then the backup force commander and the assistant backup force commander would deploy the troops given what the situation is.
Charles Abels. I'm the duty photographer and videographer for this detail. When I arrived here in Adak, Alaska, I was a young corporal. As a team, we were a platoon of Marines that simply went out to duty to the weapons compound and stood watch. Now, we had other posts to go to. We had one that was way out there. The weather was harsh. Sometimes the child wouldn't even be able to make it out there. That's why we had sea rats on standby. But nevertheless, the weapons compound was the heart and soul of the Marine Security Guard. We were family. We took care of each other.
Would be given to the commanding officer. He would convene with his executive officer and they decide how to treat it. And they'd bring him up into the barracks for office hours in the commanding officer's office. But down here on the first floor, if you will, we had an entryway over here and an entryway over there. And that was just adjacent to a small, oh God, I can't remember. My mind is just reeling right now. But it's weapon storage. And so this was a part of our main weapon storage, different from our main weapon storage. But this was the brig on the first floor. So these demising walls that we see here weren't here. There was expanded wire holding cells here for guys or Marines, or if even a Navy guy got out of hand, because there was no police department at that point in time. The Marines were here. We were the police.
Yeah, interesting.
I was excited to leave, but after all these years, I'm excited to be back.
Saw the value in all this.
Yeah, saw the value. I did a lot of growing up.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Did a lot of bonding, and learned a lot of life lessons that stayed with me my whole life.
Absolutely. I'm Corporal Mike Rodgers. I arrived here in March of 1985 as a PFC. And I spent 2 years here on the island. I was supposed to be here for a year, but after 2 6-month extensions, I was here until June of 1987. This is a special place for me. I was in every single post and did every single thing that Marines typically did here on the guard platoon. I'm a proud 2nd Section Marine. I was a fire team leader. I was a squad leader of the 50 Cal Squad. As with Byron, this is a very emotional trip for me. I got to tell you, I shed a few tears on our final approach into the island and the airport, and I forgot how absolutely beautiful this island is. So I'm privileged to be here with my fellow Marines. Holy shit. This is the rec room.
Yeah.
Same couches. And then once you got processed in, you went over to supply to pick up all your gear.
There you go.
I'll let you go in first.
It says here, all this wall is Adak wood. It must have Adak wood on it.
Well,
This
Adak
wall,
doesn't grow wood.
they took it off.
When I was here, I think we had 3 guard sections.
Really?
Yeah,
We had 2.
Yeah.
we had 3.
We're taking a nice little walk
But it is
inside the
salvageable 'cause it is
barracks.
concrete.
We're young Marines. We're billeted, and it is nothing like what Byron, Barry, and I had. It's an upgrade compared to what we had. Each room had a head.
Maybe that was the beef up with the turrets and all that, and they added more Marines, so you had a bigger contingent than we did.
Right.
That could very well be.
One of the stories I want to tell is I went home on leave for a month, and about the 3rd week my grandmother had passed away. And so I wasn't sure whether I'd be able to stay there for her funeral, so I called back, talked to the first sergeant. First sergeant was gracious and said, or Lance Corporal Rodgers at the time, take all the time that you need to tend to your family, and when you're ready to come back, just let us know, and we'll be expecting you. At the time, I'd won the Meritorious Corporal Board but hadn't been promoted yet. And I was supposed to be promoted while I was on leave, but I had had those plans in place. And so when I came back, my platoon sergeant picked me up at the airport and says, "You need to get to the barracks right away." And it was on a Sunday, and I didn't understand why. He goes, "The CO wants to promote you on the spot today. He doesn't want to wait any longer." So on a Sunday, when everybody's supposed to be doing their own thing, the platoon all had to get dressed in their camis and come down here in formation. He said, "Get your ass upstairs and change and get your ass down here." And so that's what I did. And CO came all the way out off his time on the weekend and held a formation and promoted me on the spot right here because he didn't want to wait any longer. And one of the things I really appreciated was not only that, but while pinning my stripes on, he asked me if everything was okay with my family and if I was doing well. So again, very compassionate command, but they cared about taking care of their people and making sure they got promoted in a timely manner. So I'm very appreciative of that, and that's one of my fondest experiences here. Thank you.
My name is Corporal Byron Bailey. I arrived here in August of '78 and was stationed here through August of '79, specifically assigned to Section 1 Guard Platoon. I lived here with these men. I bonded here with these men. And it's heartbreaking to see the devastation of this place that we left behind. It's very emotional for me. That's the reason I came back. Very heartbreaking to see this in this condition. The United States Marine Corps took pride. We buffed these floors. We washed these windowsills. This was Spit Shine Marine Barracks, Adak, Alaska, and there was no better than us at the time. So it's very difficult. It's just tragic. And to let people just destroy it. It's just devastating.
We have rooms on both sides.
Yep. So the corridor would be approximately where I'm standing right here now. And our rooms would be to each side. And the doors would be parallel to each other.
And the head was in the center of the
Down at that end.
barracks.
We'd spent so much time in the compound walking exterior posts. It felt good to have warm water and heat on your bones and sleep in your own rack. When we got back to the barracks on our off time, and my window would face the TT club, which is no longer there. And a lot of the guys would come down to the deck and they'd say, "Hey, what's going on at the TT?" Because when certain vehicles would show up, they'd know that people were there, or the kegs were delivered, or they got beer again, because there were times we'd drink the TT out of beer. I don't know if you gentlemen remember that, but
This one's really good.
This is where we're going to stop at 307.
Oh, that's
And
your room.
I'm going to do
Yeah.
the same photo.
green and red and orange. I mean, whoever can pick the color. I mean, why wasn't it red and yellow?
Yeah.
It's funny, at my age, right? For the Marines, serving with the Marine Security Forces on Adak, it was not just all work and no play. On Bering Hill, the Bering building was like a large 3-story clubhouse full of activities for the young Marines. It could be argued it provided all forms of interest: a bowling alley, swimming pool, large gym, weight room, the Bering Theater, the Willy Waw Cafe, and the pizzeria. However, depending on when you served on Adak, it was the Ptarmigan Club and later the Tundra Tavern with its large dance floor that attracted the off-duty guard sections of the Marines.
This right here was the Bearing Gym in the Bearing Building. This is where Marines, when they were off duty fundamentally, training days, during the training days, would come in here and do their morning exercise before going outside and running. It was also a great place for basketball games and the likes, and smokers. You can see the old basketball rack up in there, but the drawings here is what fascinates me. Wow, this was back in the day, was a pretty nice functional library.
It was.
And here's the Tundra Tavern, which used to be the bar. Along that wall was the bar. This buffet thing wasn't here when I was there. Tables would be over here along the windows, giving you a nice view when you had dinner. And then over here is the dance floor. And in that corner where that white paint is, it looks like a tree or whatever, that's where the DJ hut was. And this is where we would dance. And from the ceiling hung a large glass disco ball.
Tim and I buying for records. Oh, look at this. There's a wooden 8-track tape holder.
I almost feel like I should be walking around here with my M16. And today's weather will be wind.
They have their own chow hall. These are barracks. There's, I think,
These guys had fucking good study on
they had great duty out here. Yep.
They didn't have to go anywhere, just here.
The Marines of the security force on Adak were not the only Marines assigned to the tiny Aleutian Island during the Cold War. Surprisingly, they seen very little of each other and had very little understanding for each other's roles. For the Marine Security Force, it was to provide security for Zito Point at the Classic Wizard and security at the Dinosaur Cage. It could be said there was a rivalry between the two units, the Marines of the Security Forces and the Crypto Marines of Company I Marine Support Battalion of NSGA. However, the mission of the Crypto Marines was just as important, providing real-time surveillance and intelligence during and to the end of the Cold War. In July of 2022, 3 Company I Marines returned to Adak and their former haunts. The following account is from Todd Gabriel, as narrated by Charles Abels. In addition to videos and photographs provided by R.J. Russell, this is their story. Company I, Marine Support Battalion, was a special intelligence company in support of the Naval Security Group activity, Adak, Alaska. NSGA Adak was established during World War II in support of military operations in the Pacific Theater. During the Cold War, NSGA Adak functioned as a strategic surveillance and intelligence gathering outpost. The Marines in Company I all had the honor of holding top-secret clearances and worked diligently in support of naval operations involved in signals intelligence and electronic warfare, providing critical information to U.S. military forces. The Marines of Company I carried an MOS in the 2600s. During my time, that MOS was designated as Special Intelligence and has since changed to Signal Intelligence, Ground Electronic Warfare. Duty for my MOS focused on strategic and tactical intelligence, listening to radio and other broadcasts to determine enemy's position. It includes jobs like signal intelligence analysis, crypto analysis, signal intelligence electronic warfare, and radio reconnaissance. Occasionally, a few select Marines would be asked to provide support of the Navy's P-3 Orion's operation, dropping sonar buoys in the ocean in order to track Soviet submarine operations outside of Petropavlovsky in Kamchatka, Russia, and always being met by MiG-29s to escort us out of Russian airspace. The Marines of Company I worked in a secured skiff inside a huge antenna array affectionately known as the Dinosaur Cage. When not working in the skiff, the Marines would continue in weapons training, land navigation, Marine Corps knowledge, and warfare strategies, humps around Clam Lagoon, and much more. 3 years ago, 3 of us flew back to Adak for a week. Currently, there are only about 30 civilians living on the island. The main reason for the visitors is hunting and fishing, but our purpose was to relive the best days of our lives. Even though the buildings have been abandoned and have the feel of a post-apocalyptic movie set, it was an amazing experience to visit our old barracks, skiff, and base in general, as well as all of the buildings of the Naval Air Station and the warhead storage facility the Marine Security Force guarded.
Here's the outside of the nuclear fallout shelter. And these are underground, and they're U-shaped.
sweating.
Okay, thanks everyone for showing up here. It is August 8th, 2024, and we're going to unveil the new U.S. Marine Memorial Park sign. So what we wanted to do is rededicate this park and give it a new sign. So in preparation for this trip, I shot out on Facebook pictures of the sign in anticipation for this, and a Marine in Minnesota saw that and he thought it was in such disrepair and was so worn out that he said it should have a new facelift and he would cover that. His name is Jeff Groves, and him and his buddy who was on Adak, Reverdy Anderson, offered to pay for these signs. We're giving this a new facelift and bring dignity back to this memorial park is the idea here on behalf of all the Marines who served here. So men, let's just unveil the sign so they can, for all to see. So as you can see, there are two signs here. This is an aluminum plate, which is awesome. It'll last a long, long time. But you can see behind it, I wanted to paint it red, Marine Corps red, but because of rain and whatnot, it's just not doable in this climate. Marines do with what we got. And one way or another, we're going to get this done. And this is what we have. Hopefully, maybe sometime in the future, we can have a bronze plaque put up here. But until that day comes, this is what it is. So this identifies it indeed is United States Marine Corps Memorial Park, Adak, Alaska. And this is more of a descriptor. Marine Barracks, also known as Marine Security Force Company, Adak, Alaska, in commemoration and memory to all Marines who served on Adak. Semper Fi, that's our motto. And then the installation date is August 8th, today, 2024. And it identifies the Marines came here as a security force in 1942 and left in 1996. So that commemorates this park, so people can come up here and get a pretty good idea what this is about, and they can study it more on their own. But that Marine who donated this came to my attention that when he was here, a Marine officer was killed on a search and rescue mission. This is that plaque. His name is Lieutenant Alfred Lucier Jr., USMC. He was killed on a SAR mission on Adak Island, Alaska, August 10th, 1983. And this is on his behalf, Semper Fi. So he had there was a funeral ceremony on the island, and I'll read in brief what was said at that funeral. It said, "In memoriam, First Lieutenant Alfred Lucier Jr., USMC, born 11 April 1953, died 10 August 1983. First Lieutenant Lucier was born in Boston, Massachusetts, the son of Alfred and Elizabeth Lucier. He attended the Boston Latin School in Boston, Massachusetts, and graduated in June 1971. He received a Bachelor of Arts degree in 1975 from Columbia University. His Marine Corps career began on 22 December 1975 when he enlisted as a private. This is after college. He graduated from MCRD Paris Island, South Carolina in March 1976, and attended the Defense Language Institute in Monterey, California, where he became fluent in Mandarin Chinese. First Lieutenant Lucier attended Officer Candidate School in Quantico, Virginia as a sergeant in December of 1979. and was commissioned as a second lieutenant in April 1980. He served in Guam, Okinawa, Japan, North Carolina, and Adak. He was currently assigned as a platoon commander at Company C, 1st Reconnaissance Battalion, 1st Marine Division, Camp Pendleton, California. First Lieutenant Lucier was held in the highest esteem by his fellow Marines and by his friends. He was considered among the finest of Marines and is deeply missed. So, a quick anecdote on that: the Marines who donated these signs, who served underneath him, that Marine told me a quick story which kind of defines the character of this Marine. So, this Marine was in the barracks, and Lieutenant Lucier came up to him and said, "Marine, you look a little disheveled. Is there any reason for that?" And he said, "Sir, you're absolutely right." And then Lieutenant Lucier stood and looked at himself and said, "So am I. That makes the two of us. Carry on." And so we have to honor him. And that's why we're here. And I'd like to set the tone in the future so others who have had Marines that may have passed, that have some type of relationship with Adak, could do so on their own. We had the plaque made and then applied to a rock that was on this pile, and will be placed in memory of him, similar to a burial site. And so it should be treated with solemnity and as on behalf of those who served in the Marine Corps on this island. So, Mike, you want to place that? So we're going to pay respects to Lieutenant Lucier at this time. Thanks, folks, for coming out.
Marine Corps has an old adage, once a Marine, always a Marine. And during our visit on Adak, our fire team lived up to that adage and then some. We were a team that had traveled from across our nation to meet in Anchorage, Alaska, with different backgrounds and experiences under our belt. Barry, our team leader, worked for several months putting together a reunion of Marines who had served on Adak. He had a vision and a story to tell about the Cold War Marines of Adak. And though our team was small, we discussed his contagious vision and missions over several weeks. We had a plan and a goal in place while on Adak. And through all of this, managed to keep a group of headstrong, opinionated old men together to accomplish this. Mike is more Marine than I was, and I retired from the Marine Corps. However, he had arrived to the Marine Barracks after Barry, Byron, and I had left, and upgrades had been made to the barracks and the Mao compound. His knowledge of the changes we were seeing and experiences as a Marine were invaluable. Byron, our team philosopher, thoughtful in what we were seeing, what he was understanding, and said it eloquently as a Marine with what we were feeling. His construction background was an invaluable asset as we were exploring the barracks and the RFF at the Mao compound. And I, the team photographer, I wanted to capture and record so much of what I was seeing on Adak. My team was very patient with me when I stepped away on my own, or I asked them to stop the truck when traveling to a destination so I could snap a shot. We complemented each other working as a team. It had been an intensive week-long operation, and we accomplished what we set out to do. We were clearly a Marine unit practicing what we had learned so long ago. And so, if you were to ask me what impact Adak had on me when I served up there, I would tell you it was because of Marines like Barry, Byron, and Mike, and the young Marines I served with up there that had left an indelible mark on me that carries to this day. They were the foundation of my experiences as an NCO and staff NCO, the very reason I stayed in and retired a Sergeant Major in May of '99, and then earlier this year, June of '25, retiring from Sturm, Ruger and Company. Therefore, in this next segment, I wish to share the lighter moments of our visit. For all the Marines who served on Adak, life was not all work and no play. There were the lighter moments we shared as a family on an isolated outpost during the Cold War as Marines. And it continues with us during the week on Adak. Did you have a payphone out here, Mike?
Yeah, we had a payphone out there to call Mickey D's.
On the way out.
I can hear from them.
Did you get your sunflower seeds?
I did.
Everything's all good and go now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else you needed?
By the way, if you guys need zip ties, I brought some zip ties.
I got cable ties.
No, they're just the black zip ties. If you need to zip tie any.
I was in the fever of acquiring artifacts for the museum. My head hit a panel and split this open, so I got to do a little microsurgery on this thing.
Detail! All 10! Dress right!
Whoa, dress right, dress.
And you went left.
No, I went dress right.
Yeah.
And we took up, 3 floors here, at least the guard force did. So that's it.
Perfect.
Okay. I didn't have it on.
Really?
You see that little red dot?
Yep.
That little red dot means you're recording.
Nuclear advance. Let me do this all over.
I'm not going to climb up there. Just want to look at it eyeball. Bolts look pretty secure in here in the wood.
Okay, what you've just witnessed and seen is, despite his high rank of being a sergeant major, he went up an ancient ladder well that was barely held into place into wood and risked his life to get a shot up there.
Give me that camera, damn it. You're picking on me.
Which one's the washer?
Hi, Barry.
What's happening, Barry?
Very nice to meet you.
Hey, how's the weather out there?
Drizzly.
Hold on, I just...
Hell, I'm staying home. Catch you later.
Here you go, gentlemen. Have a nice cup of shut the
Gotta lift up to the... Gotta watch nails. Now,
This has got to be it.
Colonel Herdering said is the only log cabin on the island.
No, the only one cabin in the Aleutian Island.
Yeah, okay.
And then the other thing that tips me off too.
Flooring.
Stop it.
I thought from over there it was rusted. Doesn't look like there's anything to harvest really. A wheelbarrow.
Yeah. You ever bought a Mount Raspberry? Oh, come on, I only came here for that.
Mount Raspberry.
No, we did not have this in Adak. Give us more stories here.
On training days, when we'd be out in the field doing some infantry training, we would drive the armored vehicles down here. We wouldn't fit through the drive-through, but we'd pull out in front, and then all the Marines would get out of the armored vehicles, and we'd go in, get our order, and then we would, get our breakfast before going to the field.
You
And I
mean
thought
you
that was
guys
pretty
went through a McDonald's drive-through before reporting to duty?
No, going out training.
In our personnel carrier.
Yeah, but we didn't go to the drive-through because the drive-through wasn't big enough. But we would come into the front.
That's why the roof is damaged.
Hey, we did
Washed,
the same thing.
folded,
It's not like I
starched,
sat here and
and
ate McDonald's every day.
We don't know that.
But after you went to Pizza Hut, you went to what? The Kulak Gym over there to work it off.
Yeah.
You had bowling alley in there, a weight gym, you had a whirlpool, hot tub, you name it.
Cannot escape the wind.
First place of the wind.
Oh yeah, she lives up to her name for sure.
And so thank you for Charles Abels for bringing me out here and for this this important footage to add to the May documentary. Picture a man beyond sight and sound. Chief Petty Officer Smith, out at the Naval Station, thought he had a normal day starting. Little did he know he was about to enter the twilight zone. Come with me and we'll see what went wrong. Aisle 4.
We're good to go.
While exploring Adak on this trip with fellow Marines I had served with over 45 years ago, one great story had led to another. This trip indeed went from a journey to an expedition that evolved into a personal odyssey that I will never forget. It was somewhat cathartic as well for me. I have done much to give back to the Marine Corps through the years, thankful for what the Marine experience did for me as a person that shaped my future. It indeed was a game changer for me, if you will. Thus, being at the place where the foundation of it all for me was started, on Adak, I felt returning here I could in a way show that it was all worth it. By paying homage to the ghosts of the Marines of Adak and thanking them, and as serving as a venue to bring out and develop my talents that propelled my career ultimately into medicine. And for that I am eternally grateful. When I look back at my life, I am so appreciative. I am proud and feel very lucky as the American dream worked out for me. The Marines were a good part of that, and I have so much to be grateful for. Flying out of Adak, as we rolled down the runway on takeoff, I felt teary-eyed, but good inside. I felt a sense of reconciliation and was ready to move on to my next chapter in life. This trip was so worth it beyond words.
For me, the Marine Corps changed my life. It gave me the tools and building blocks to succeed in the years to come. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, while at the same time, it was one of the most rewarding. My experience in the Marines was a key ingredient in creating the best version of myself. Being assigned to Marine Corps Security Force Adak, Alaska, truly took it to another level. As one of the most isolated duty stations in the world, it was no doubt difficult. There was no escaping or leaving Adak like other duty stations. All we had was each other, which forged a strong brotherhood that lives on to this day. It provided me the opportunity to serve with the finest men and women this country has to offer. Our mission was intensely serious, filled with great responsibility, as the stakes were high. As a young Marine, I didn't realize how consequential our mission was, as we were laser focused on the mission and giving our best. As a close-knit unit, we constantly pushed each other. I excelled beyond my wildest dreams, being meritoriously promoted to corporal, earning Marine of the Quarter and Marine of the Year. The Marines I served with were not only key to my personal achievements, but also our success as a unit. The end result was that it had a profound impact and changed the trajectory of my life. My return to Adak after almost 40 years was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. After spending 2 years there, it truly felt like a homecoming. It was also emotional. The time we spent together was like being back in the Marine Corps for a week. The camaraderie, honor, courage, commitment to each other, loyalty, integrity, and esprit de corps we exhibited as a fire team is proof that the Marine Corps Brotherhood is a lifelong gift embodying our Marine motto, Semper Fidelis. To Barry, Byron, and Chuck, thank you for such a rich and rewarding experience, one that I will never forget. Semper Fi.
Adak, Alaska. While stationed there in 1978 through 1979, Adak allowed me the opportunity to learn about and bond with many men from around our country, learning their life lessons and wisdom. The 13 months on station, training, standing duty, and liberty with, taught me many core values I carry with me still today. After leaving Adak, those lessons of code of conduct, know your mission, or how to keep a Marine uniform squared away, along with many others, allowed me to apply that in my personal and professional life. To always reach and work for perfection gave me the skill set for success. The leadership lesson I learned while on Adak was a leader knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. The essence of leadership is vision. I am eternally grateful for the time spent with so many great men. Adak will always have an indelible mark on my life. From its beauty and harshness to its quiet and tranquil days when they are gifted, Adak is something and someplace very unique.
I thank my fire team for allowing me to be a part of this mission to tell our story.
I can say with certainty, having served with the Marines at Marine Barracks, Adak, Alaska, left an indelible mark on me. Always there, working in the back of my mind, a reminder of times demanding, challenging, and intense, to push forward with failures and success, and to accomplish the mission. It was the very reason I made the Marine Corps a career, with 14 years active duty and 9 years in the reserve, having retired a sergeant major. And it has helped me through the years, having just recently retired from Sturm Ruger and Company after 35 years. And though my life can be said still a challenge, it is still blessed. Moreover, as I reflect on this adventure, I have so many reasons why the experiences of Adak left such an indelible mark on me. I only hesitate because my reasons are not all my own. It is mixed in with all the Marines of Adak I had the privilege and honor of serving with. And until recently, after a 44-year absence, I arrived back on Adak with a ragtag group of old Marines, and the recollections stepped forward from the recesses of my mind. Some so deep they did not see the light of day for decades until I came back. For that reason, Barry, Byron, and Mike, I thank you for the opportunity of sharing the memories, especially those moments sitting behind our barracks, and the Adak weather was classic. Setting the proper ambiance, we remembered. It did not stop us. We were a tight vintage fire team, bringing decades of baggage and background. But once we formed up in Anchorage, we snapped to, and for that week, we'd lived and breathed as Marines of Adak. Semper Fi, brothers.
Thank you. We hope you enjoy your 2-hour, 10-minute flight to Anchorage. Thank you, and welcome on board.